to 64, and then over 65, it gets a little harder. But honestly, I would say, depending on how physiologically young somebody is, way through 70s, for the most part, we're going to be okay. And then it just gets a little bit trickier in the 80s. I don't think we have anybody in their 90s. No, that's not true. I think we have one man in his early 90s.
Welcome to the Next Level Income Show, where it's our goal to take your income, your investments, and your life to the next level. I'm your host, Chris Larson. If you haven't yet, get a copy of our book for free at our website, nextlevelincome.com. That's www.nextlevelincome.com. Just click on the book link, and I'll even send you a copy if you put your address in. On today's show, we welcome back Dr. Doug Lucas with Optimal Human Health. Dr. Lucas has been my personal physician. He's also become a personal friend of mine. He's helped me optimize not only my physical health, but also my mental health. And today, he's going to talk about specifically how to optimize your bone health. So if you want to improve your health as we go into the new year, stay tuned for this show. Share it with any friends that you may have that want to do the same. All right, Dr. Doug, welcome back to the Next Level Income Show.
Hey, Chris. Nice to see you again.
Yeah, it's great to see you as well. And yeah, I'm excited to get you back on the show here as we get into the new year. I know a lot of people, as the new year approaches, they make their New Year's resolutions. And, you know, one of the big things that people like to focus on is their health. And I know we talk a lot about money on this show, but we've had you on multiple times because, you know, as we work with our coaching clients, the first thing we actually talk about is health. And, you know, if you can buy more time, you know, that means you can have more time to work, you can have more time to invest, you can grow your wealth, but more importantly, that's time that you can spend on things that you love. So, Dr. Lucas, I would love for you to share a little bit about what you do with your business, and you know, for those listeners that may be new to the show that haven't heard you here before.
Yeah, thanks. So yeah, it's been a while. So unless your listeners are listening continuously over the course of years, this is probably new to them. But I am an orthopedic surgeon by training, but I left that model in around 2019 and an integrative practice called Optimal Human Health MD. And the original intent was to work with individuals like yourself who really want to optimize, you know, just have a better health span, live better, longer, feel better, perform better, all those things. And we still do that to some extent. But funny thing happened 3 years ago, shortly after we started, really, is that we started attracting a lot of people with osteoporosis. And it was because of my background in orthopedics and the approach that we were doing. In the osteoporosis space, people generally want to try to avoid the drugs and to reverse it naturally, which is totally possible. So we kind of shifted our program a little bit and shifted some of the labs and our approach and our team to accommodate individuals with osteoporosis. And that is really pretty much all we do in that practice now. So now we have optimal bone health program within the company called Optimal Human Health MD. And that's the bulk of the work that we do. But out of that has grown two fun things. So out of that has grown something called the Osteo Collective, which is a community, an international community now of individuals with osteoporosis who are kind of DIY their own bone health. And so we have spent a lot of time, energy, resources in building out this community, and it's awesome. It's one of the most fun things I get to part in because we're watching people just proactively go after it, and it's really fun to see. The third thing would be our hormone company called PEMA Bioidentical, and that's a hormone company really mostly marketed towards perimenopause and postmenopausal women because we see so many women in the space of bone health that just can't access to care. So we took our telehealth platform and just put that out there as a hormone company. Again, different team, different approach, but working really well for women that need those tools.
Yeah. No, I love it. And look, full disclosure, you've been my doctor here now for a few years and have had great results. You work with my wife as well. And, I can share with the audience, but talk a little bit about, how what you do is different than how most people interact with the healthcare system. So most people, they have their insurance and they look up and say, oh, I can go down the hill to Dr. Smith, and he's in network, and I'm going to go see him. I'm going to have blood work done every year or two, and if I have a problem, I'll go see him. You guys are way different than that, right?
Yeah. So when I was thinking about jumping ship from the conventional medical system, I talked to different people in different different modes of trying to provide care. And ultimately, most doctors they want to provide care the way that they want to care for patients.
Yeah.
It gets in the way. I mean, there's just no question. Ask any doctor if insurance gets in the way of the way they want to care for their patients. And I guarantee you the answer is yes.
Yeah.
So I got out of the conventional model. I realized that I couldn't use insurance if I wanted to be able to talk to patients for as long as I wanted to. If I wanted to order the lab test that I felt like I needed to order, if I wanted to be able to do the interventions that I wanted to do, insurance would just get in the way. So we went down the cash-based pathway, and I wish there was another way, but there just isn't if you want to do some of these health optimization things that we're going to talk about. It has to be in the cash base. It has to be outside of the traditional medical model. So we went down that pathway and created a model that is really driven around sort of a membership style. So, for your doctor, you go to your doctor, you see them for maybe 5 minutes, and they do a quick checkup, and then they usually prescribe a drug if you have a problem. That's our system, and that's not wrong. That's just the way our system is designed. So I feel like if we want to help prevent disease, if we want to help people to optimize their health beyond what care can do, then we have to have time to sit down and talk to the patient. We have to have at least an hour. We have to have frequent back and forth. We have to get more biomarkers. We have a team of dietitians and coaches to help do all the things that the traditional system won't pay for. So we created this model where we can do all these things, and we can all under the roof of a single membership price. And that way we've been able to help people to achieve their health optimization goals.
Yeah, no, I love it. And like I said, I've been through it. And, for those that are listening, what's different is, normally we wait till there's a problem and, we're in pain, or we have an acute injury, or, you have a heart attack, and you're like, oh, let's go see like why this happened. And I think it's akin to, having your car break down, or even have a car accident. And, it's amazing, right? We have amazing surgeons, probably some of the best surgeons and doctors in the world here in the United States, amazing technology.
Yeah,
you and I both got to interact in that surgical space, it's really cool. But, I started to talk to, the doctors, the surgeons that I was working with, and, you saw this as well. And you realize that, wait, what if this person was 30 pounds lower in weight? What if they lost weight first? And I started to look at the outcomes, and you see that a 10% reduction, in mass, or 10-pound reduction in joints and those things has this massive impact. And it's like, how come we're not looking at that? So what's really cool is what Dr. Doug does is they look forward and they prevent a lot of these issues. And I've seen it. I've had friends, that I've referred to you and seen them reduce their issues, their osteoporosis issues and different things. And you're very holistic in terms of, the diet, in addition to the other, things like peptides and hormones and all those things that can make a big difference. The other thing is you've helped me optimize my mental performance. So, what I found over time is that if I eat the right foods for my body, for my genetics, and do you have all of your patients go through genetic testing, Dr. Lucas?
We used to, and we don't anymore, just because we found that some people weren't interested or they were concerned about privacy. And so we eliminated the need to do it for everyone. And so now we just do it for those that are interested. I always want it. It's always helpful, but not everybody wants to do it.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's, I learned a lot, when you figure out what works for your body to eat, you can optimize, your mental acuity as well as your, body composition. What have you seen in terms of diet and how it relates to bone health, specifically for women? Because, I know there's healthy diets that are out there. What have you found, and what have you learned with your patient population in terms of diet and how that affects their bone health?
Yeah, so we see some very consistent trends in diet with people that have osteoporosis. And usually with osteoporosis, you also have lost muscle mass. So you have this thing called sarcopenia. So osteoporosis and sarcopenia kind of go hand in hand. And there are both lifestyle things as well as nutrition patterns that go along with this. And you can talk about extremes of diet, but in general, especially women, they're generally under eating protein, if not under eating calories and energy altogether. And it's just it's kind of like the diet culture that we're in with women, just wanting to always be lean as a group, not all women, of course. But there just is the trend to say, well, I just want to be lean. And I love this new trend of saying that need to be strong before they need to be lean, right? And
Yeah.
so they're eating more, they're eating more protein, they're actually doing resistance training.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that also is essentially absent in the osteoporosis group is a history of doing any kind of impact or resistance training. Sometimes
Interesting.
they are athletes, sometimes
Yeah.
they're endurance runners, cyclists, swimmers, because
Yeah.
those activities can lead to bone loss. But a lot of times they just haven't done any kind of activity; it just wasn't part of their life. And
Yeah.
so, as a result of poor nutrition, poor movement choices, they end up losing muscle and bone and end up in a bad space in their 40s, 50s, and 60s.
Yeah. No, I've seen that. I've had friends. I think I've shared the story with you. Like, I mean, I'm talking about elite level cyclists, like national, even world class caliber cyclists for their ages, and they find out I'm osteopenic, like one step away from osteoporosis. And
Yeah.
I mean, these are men you'd be like, you'd be envious of their physical composition. But what happens is because of that lack of impact, like you're sitting at a desk, and I was actually just trying to stand up at my standing desk here, but you were probably laughing as I was trying to get up. It was something was getting stuck. I was getting a little bit of a malfunction here. But yeah, this particular individual was essentially sedentary when he wasn't on his bicycle, and he was put on osteoporosis medication in his early 40s.
Yeah.
And what he did was he changed his diet. He started hiking again with a backpack and doing resistance training. And within 6 months, he totally reversed it.
Yeah.
What are some of the top things that individuals can do for their bone health?
Yeah, I think number one is identification. Like what is your
Hmm.
bone density? And we're actually
Okay.
fortunate here in Asheville. We have a device called a REMS. A chiropractor named Mike Lewin up in Black Mountain, and so he has this REMS device, which is an ultrasound, which tells you
Oh,
about
wow.
both density and quality, which is really important. So
Yeah.
most people though have access to DEXA, so we have to use
Yeah.
DEXA
Yeah.
because people have access to it, and it
Got it.
tells you about bone density. Knowing
Yeah.
your starting point is hands down the most important thing, and this is for
Interesting.
and pay attention to this if you zoned out. This is true for any adult. Doesn't matter if you're 20 years old, 30, 40, 50 and on up. Know what your bone density is because you need to know what your starting point is. I
Very
hear
cool. Yeah.
so many times people say, well, oh my gosh, well, why am I losing bone? And I'm like, well, when was your last time? Like, I never had one. I'm like, well, we don't know what your bone started at, so I can guess that you're losing bone, but it's important to have a trend, and knowing what your starting point is a really good way to do that. So
Got it.
that's not, but let's assume then somebody has osteoporosis and they
Yeah.
need to reverse it, or even osteopenia and their bones continuing to get worse, and they want to bend that corner and turn the other direction.
Yeah.
So then the three big things are going to be nutrition, exercise, and hormone optimization.
Okay.
So the nutrition part, we kind of hit it already. We said that people are protein deficient. So now we need to talk about being protein forward. So they need to get adequate protein, probably somewhere around 1 gram per pound of ideal body weight, and preferably from animal sources. And then the rest of the diet, you can kind of fill in with whatever you want. And after that, as long as it's a low inflammatory, not an ultra processed food diet, I kind of don't care. I prefer to be whole foods. I prefer to have nice, fresh, organic fruits and vegetables along with your animal protein. And aside from that, that's probably all you actually need. So getting adequate food, adequate energy from good sources is hard. So this is actually probably the
Yeah.
hardest thing that we'll do. And then the second thing is exercise. So we take a population of women and men who have oftentimes never exercised and then teach them from the ground, how do you lift a weight? How do ultimately we want to get you to lifting barbells and doing things like a deadlift and a back squat. And that is
Yeah.
realistic by most measures.
Yeah.
But I can tell you in our patients and our community, I mean, we've seen hundreds and hundreds of people go through this, that they work their way up to that. It takes a long
Yeah.
time. Don't do
Yeah.
it tomorrow.
Right.
But
Right.
that's the kind of work that you need to be doing to maintaining muscle and bone. Learning how to do impact, so like
Mhm.
heel drops or box jumps or simulated impact and other ways, like
Yeah.
those are really important tools to be able to drive the bone to want to make more bone.
Yeah.
So we have to be doing some kind of impact, and then optimizing hormones. It doesn't matter if it's just testosterone for men or hormone replacement for women. Those are probably two of the powerful tools on top of the lifestyle.
Interesting. Yeah. So, yeah, diet is key. So whether I used to say when I was training reps, and you got to work with reps in the OR, I said you need to eat like a professional athlete. You need to to fuel your body. Because if you want to perform at a highest level, so if you're listening, you're like, Chris, I don't race bikes. I'm not, I don't lift as much as Dr. Doug and do these things. That doesn't mean that eating like a professional athlete can't benefit you, which means you can perform better early in the morning. You can get a better workout in the gym. You can be a better husband or father um, or mother or wife, or just perform better in your day-to-day job, be more productive. And that's really a big thing. The exercise, I saw it when I did my DEXA scan, doing, heavier weights. But I mean, doing a deadlift may seem a bit, um, uh, overwhelming to somebody that's never done it. But like, I mean, you could start with like touching your toes and just using the right form and learning. Like, I remember I learned how to lift, like how to place my feet properly, the proper placement of the knees, and all those things, which can be beneficial, not just for lifting, but also just for injury prevention, right?
Well, right. I mean, just think about like if you have young children or if you have
Yeah.
grandchildren, like how do you
Yeah.
bend down? Like that's a
Right.
deadlift, right?
Yeah.
Right. So,
Yeah.
yeah, like learning this form
Yeah.
is really, really important. And I think the big challenge here too for people that have osteoporosis, especially if they've been considered quote unquote frail, meaning like their doctor said, "Oh my gosh, don't bend forward and touch your toes." So then they're like, "Oh,
Oh,
well, how
really?
do we?" Yeah, oh yeah. Doctors, they're very conservative around activity for people with osteoporosis because they don't want them to fracture. But
Yeah.
you have to do some kind of activity in order to improve your bone health, unless you're just
Right.
going to rely on the drug, of course, is what most
Yeah.
doctors are going to recommend. So
Interesting.
there's this big gray area as far as people that recognize, oh my gosh, I need to do something, but my doctor told me not to lift 5 pounds. But Dr. Doug said I need to do a back squat with, 85% of my 1 rep max. I don't even know what that means. Right? So it's like there's
Yeah.
a really big challenge for especially older women to get into the phase of weightlifting. But there are a lot of
Yeah.
resources out there to help them get there.
Yeah. No, I've been going to a CrossFit gym for over a decade now. And what's cool is they have a whole section dedicated for individuals. And I actually take my stepfather there, who's 71, and he's working with a trainer there. And
Nice.
he was doing step ups, and then, next week he moves up to weighted step ups, and he's going through these movements and these motions, which is really cool. So yeah, if you haven't ever worked out, there's so many options now, whether it's YouTube or, going to a CrossFit gym or just your local Y, where you can make a difference. Is there an age, Dr. Doug, where you see that it's just too late? It doesn't make sense to do any of this. Like, what are some of your oldest patients? Like, how old are they, and where, what kind of improvements have you seen with your program? Are you a high income business owner or professional earning 300,000 or even more a year, but still feel like you're living paycheck to paycheck? Are you comfortable working until you're 65 or 70 to retire? Or do you want to achieve financial independence and live life on your own terms? You could join myself and Matt Ford and learn how we both became financially independent in our early 30s. We will teach you how to make, keep, and grow your money, teaching you strategies to maximize your earnings, keep your income that you've earned through tax strategy and legal structures, and ultimately teach you how to grow it by determining your personal investing strategy, as well as teach you how to analyze investments so you can grow your passive income to the point to live life on your own terms. Our coaching clients reliably do this in 7 years or less. To learn more, check out our coaching program at nextlevelincome.com/coaching. That's nextlevelincome.com/coaching.
Yeah, so age is not as important as the ability to do some of the tools, especially like HRT, hormone replacement for women.
Yeah.
But we find that sort of over the age of 80, it's less likely we're going to see as impressive a result. We see patients in their 80s that they do improve. It's just slower.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons for that is that if they've never been on hormone replacement therapy and they're 30 years out from that, it's probably just too risky to start at that point.
Got it.
But if you back away from that and you get into women in their 70s, we've got some rock star 70-year-olds who are just improving bone health. They feel great. They're improving their muscle mass. They're like just blown away by how
Yeah.
good they feel.
Yeah.
So I think, like we sort of say like, to 64 and then over 65, it gets a little harder. But honestly, I would say, depending on how physiologically young somebody is,
Yeah.
all the way through 70s,
Yeah.
for the most part, we're going to be okay. And then it just gets a little bit trickier in the 80s. I don't think we have anybody in their 90s. No, that's not true. I think we have one man in his early 90s.
Incredible. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, my mother-in-law's in her mid 70s. She still goes to the gym. She was a runner for a long time. She's had a hip replacement, and it is amazing to see what she's able to do. And compared to somebody that just is sedentary,
Yeah.
to a large effect. And you brought up something. Now I know medicine, it's changed a lot over the last 10, 20 years with would you call it personalized medicine, what you guys do? Is that a
But
like
that's
what?
that's one way to call it precision
Yeah,
medicine, personalized
precision. Yeah,
medicine. Yeah, there's a
yeah,
lot of words there.
yeah. So, yeah, the concierge, precision, personalized medicine. We've seen a lot of this, but you've brought this up a couple times. Hormone replacement therapy. I know I've seen stuff where it's been restricted, from use here in certain moments, and then over the past few years. But I just texted you. I saw a text from RFK Jr.
Hmm.
and he was talking about several different things. But one of the things he brought up was peptides. Um, and I know there's a lot of different compounds. There's hormones, there's peptides, there's SARMs. There's a bunch of other stuff out there. What are some of the most exciting, kind of pharmaceutical or biotechnical technological technologies you've seen, and what do you think is going to happen as we see this new administration come in, and some of the shift potentially away from the traditional pharmaceutical industry, which for the record I'm a fan of shifting away from that,
Yeah.
and turning the chapter into some of these new options that are out there. What are you excited about?
Yeah. So I was excited to see that conversation come to light, and I think RFK has done a great job of bringing it to light. Also, Casey and Kelly Means are out there,
Yes.
kind of having the same conversation, right?
Yeah.
What they're pointing out is just that our system, and we all know this, but our
Yeah.
system has grown over the last, whatever, 100 years,
Yeah.
to essentially be a revolving wheel that leads to pharmaceuticals. And that's just
Yeah.
the way the system was built. And that's, you might say like, oh, nefarious and there was ill intent there. But actually, if you go back to the 1920s, most people died of infectious disease. So
Yeah.
actually, that system makes sense in that environment. But
Yeah.
now with chronic disease being the biggest thing, and this is what you hear RFK talking about, we need to look at chronic disease and like what are the contributing factors, because
Yes.
our conventional system does not do a good job of doing that. You can't do that in that system. You can't
Yeah.
look at the lifestyle factors. You can't look at alternative treatment options that can be covered by insurance. And so our system just doesn't have the capacity to do it. So having a conversation to say, well, how can we shift away from that conventional medical system? Not so much to leave it in the dust, because like you said
Yeah.
earlier, it does some amazing things.
Yeah.
And I would even say the pharmaceutical industry does some amazing things too.
Absolutely.
There's a
Yeah.
time and a place.
Yeah.
However, when we have a disease like osteoporosis is such a perfect example, most, especially women, go through menopause. They're 52. They get screened for whatever reason. They get a diagnosis. They go to their doctor. They get put on a pill, just like your friend, right? And so that is the solution in the conventional medical system. But a 52-year-old woman has, for the most part, unless there's some rare exception here, every capacity to do the lifestyle things, the nutrition, the exercise, the hormones, all the other things that can help reverse osteoporosis naturally.
Yeah.
But yet that conversation is never even had. So
Yeah.
then to be
Yeah.
able to shift away from that and say, okay, for chronic diseases, how
Mhm.
do we actually support a system that's not even like my practice, but how can we support a big system that can
Yeah.
actually do this on scale? And
And
I don't know
and
the answer to that.
incentivize it. Yeah, and
Right. Well, and
incentivize it. Yeah.
that's the thing. I had a conversation recently where they were talking about, they were this person was upset that their doctor, wouldn't talk about lifestyle, and I said, look, they don't get paid to talk about lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that they don't want to, but they actually have to produce RVUs or dollars, whichever they get paid by. So we need to find the system to be able to incentivize providers, or at least pay them to do the job that they know how to do at that point, of
Yeah.
actually looking at the lifestyle side and using all of these tools. You just mentioned a bunch of them. There are so many tools that are out there that the pharmaceutical industry doesn't like, and therefore there's lobbying against. And then you have government agencies, which you could argue they push against them because they're influenced or whatever. But in the
That's another
end, you
revolving door over
Oh, well, for sure.
there.
And then but in the end, you just have a suppression of things that can't become pharmaceuticals. So for people that aren't
Yeah.
aware, the pharmaceutical industry doesn't want to research a natural occurring product. Like, for example, like these peptides. Let's talk about peptides, right?
Yeah.
So
Let's
like
take,
BPC 157 is a popular peptide that has been used either orally or gut health, or it can be used through injections for either local musculoskeletal stuff or potentially around joints. Some people even use it but it has a remarkable healing potential. But yet, because it's a naturally occurring compound and there's not a way to make it in a new delivery, they can't ever patent that compound, that peptide.
Interesting.
Because they can't patent the peptide, they're not going to spend what is ultimately, $1 to $2 billion to
Yeah.
create
It's a
a
massive amount of
pharmaceutical.
money. Yeah.
Right. So you
Yeah.
can't like point your finger at them and say, well, you need to produce this drug, because they
Yeah.
would lose massive amounts of money.
Yeah.
But so it's the system that needs to be changed in that way.
Yeah.
But then how do we support these things that are naturally occurring? And hormones are actually right in there as well, like
Yeah.
estradiol naturally occurring, microdose progesterone naturally occurring, testosterone naturally occurring.
Hmm.
So how
Yeah.
do we produce these things in a way that we can provide them at scale
Yeah.
in a safe way? Now,
Yes.
the peptide conversation is probably the most interesting side of this, because the FDA, under pressure from wherever, FDA has always viewed peptides, at least my experiences, they view them negatively, and their goal essentially would be to wipe them out and not have them be available. And there's been sort of waves and waves of the FDA coming through and telling compounding pharmacists they can't make these compounds, not because they have evidence that they're unsafe, but simply because they don't want them on the market and then they give some kind of reason. And
Huh.
it's unfortunate because these compounds, like, let's go back to the pandemic when thymosin alpha is a really
Yeah.
popular
Yep.
immune peptide.
Yeah.
So I know lots of people who have, chronic Lyme, chronic fatigue syndrome, like
Hmm.
some of these really like funky chronic diseases that
Hmm.
can get better under some circumstances, but some people will live with them for decades or for the rest of their
Yeah.
life. Something like thymosin alpha can make a big difference for some of these patients.
Hmm.
And yet, because of claims that were made around the virus,
Wow.
the FDA came in and wiped it out. So nobody is allowed to now make thymosin alpha and resell it. So the FDA
Wow.
has that power to do that. So what's interesting about
Wow.
RFK then is his goal is to say, well, let's take a look at what the FDA has control over, and then
Yeah.
how do we, without losing the safety that we have, how do we open this up so that we
Right.
can get some of these compounds in, which
Yeah.
do have research behind them, do have
Yeah.
human research, not as big as a pharmaceutically driven, funded, multi-million-dollar study, but
Right.
they have safety data, they have out data on humans. It's reasonable to use these things in clinical practice, and that's
Yeah.
kind of how we've been doing it with peptides.
Yeah. No, I love that. I didn't know some of that stuff, but I have heard like of thymosin alpha and it kind of it was described to me like it puts your immune system almost like on the front lines, like special
Yeah,
forces
it
per se.
messes with your T cells, and so
Yeah.
for people that have like chronic Lyme, for example, they're I'm going to say this wrong, so I apologize, but I think it's the T helper cells. I'll probably say this wrong, but the T1 versus T2 ratio is what
Yeah.
it plays with, and so it
Yeah.
can have an impact on your ability to function with your immune system. And I
Yeah.
did say it wrong. It's TA1, so thymosin alpha 1 for those that
Thank
are
you. Yeah.
pointing at me right now.
Checking you. Yeah, checking you.
Yeah.
Well, that's okay. Yeah, we can go fact check that. Yeah, but I think the big thing is, and this is what I try to teach my boys, which my family, they're 14 and 12 right now, and I tell them like, hey, food is a drug, and if you can watch pay attention to your diet, eat properly, you can avoid a lot of these issues. I'll tell a quick story as we kind of wrap up here. I was working. I was actually working for Pfizer for a couple of years, and so I learned a lot about the industry coming out of college, and in the pharmaceutical space, you go to a lot of offices, you do lunches to spend time with the doctors to be able to have conversations. Um, you have an expense account, so maybe I would bring some coffees to an office to you know um, effectively bribe the front office staff to let me have a few minutes with the surgeon. Um, And then I would go out to dinners a lot too, because I might bring, a surgeon like yourself in to sit down with a primary care doctor to have a conversation about, one of our orthopedic medications. And I had chronic sinusitis. I couldn't breathe. So I go to ENT surgeon. He says, "You need surgery, Chris." Shows me my MRI. It's like, well, that's no good. I was like, I don't want surgery. I've never had surgery. And I started doing some research, and I learned that a lot of things that I was eating were very inflammatory, and that inflammation was preventing me from really being able to breathe properly. So I cut out dairy, I cut out wheat, I cut out red wine, diet sodas, and a month later, I didn't have any sinus issues. So I go for my follow-up, my pre-surgical follow-up with the surgeon, and he said, what happened? I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "You don't have any issues. Like, you don't need surgery anymore." He goes, "I've never seen this before." I said, "Well, I cut out dairy, I cut out wheat, I cut out red wine, I cut out Diet Cokes in the afternoon. And, I eat salads now. I, maybe have a glass of red wine, but I don't have those coffees in the afternoon with, the lattes." And he's like, "Well, I don't know what to say, but, you don't have a problem anymore." And it went away forever after that. So, start with your diet. Look at your exercise regimen. And then, obviously, now we have the ability to test hormones and see how those work. Dr. Lucas, if listeners want to one, get a hold of you, learn more about what you can do and how they can optimize their health, but also two, look at your community and the amazing amount of educational resources you have out there. Share a little bit about that for the audience, please.
Yeah, so if you're into social media, YouTube is our biggest outlet right now. So the Dr. Doug Show on YouTube is mostly about bone health and hormones. So that's the best to go if that's what you're interested in. If you want to look at services, then our website, optimalhumanhealth.com, is going to have kind of access to both Osteo Collective as well as the Optimal Bone Health Program. And then hormones is Pema Bioidentical. I know there's a lot of things, but Pema Bioidentical.
We'll have all this in the show notes. So if anybody's listening and they're like, whoa, slow down, we'll have it all in the show notes here for you.
Yeah. So that's the hormone company. And again, that is a sort of the same, so membership style. It's going to be cash for services, potentially insurance for the actual hormones, depending on what you end up using. A really great way to get access to hormone replacement therapy for people that have been denied it for whatever reason. Not to say we give it to everyone, but we have a different perspective because we work with a different population.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, you've helped change my life. You've helped change the health and the life of my family. I know you guys live it yourself. Dr. Lucas basically lives out on a farm. He's got chickens and food, and he's got an amazing family. So, Dr. Lucas, thank you very much for sharing your wisdom, your knowledge with our audience today. And if you're listening, check him out. Check him out on YouTube. He's got amazing stuff out there. Check out optimalhumanhealth.com if you want to learn more about his practice. And we wish everybody listening amazing end of the year, wonderful holiday season, and do something for your health. Do something for yourself and your family going forward.
Yeah. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you. Hey, Chris here again. I hope you found this episode valuable. Now, I have one more thing to gift you. We have a page for my coaching clients where you can get a free copy of my book, as well as much more from previous guests on the show. Just check out nextlevelincome.com/coaching to get a free copy of my book, audiobook, and much more. I'll send you a copy of my book and cover all the shipping costs as a thank you for listening to the podcast. Also, please like, share, and take just 90 seconds to give us a rating on Apple Podcasts.